How do recessions affect households? Opinions vary as to what exactly a recession is. In the UK, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, and you have a recession. The official US definition uses a range of indicators, many likely to impact households. These include a significant decline in economic activity spread across the market and lasting more than a few months, normally visible in falling real GDP and declining real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Regardless of the preferred definition, the effect on government finances is fairly predictable. That's because, like many other developed economies, the UK has a welfare state, so during a recession, the cost of unemployment support will go up at the same time as government income from taxes goes down. The result is an increase in the government's deficit and debt. On the other hand, the effect a recession has on households depends largely on what caused the recession in the first place, and at least as significant, the government's policy response. To illustrate how all this works, let's take a very brief look at the last 3 major crises in the UK, each of which produced a recession. The 2008 financial crisis, when many banks became unviable, also produced what the media dubbed a credit crunch. The result was a serious shortage of mortgages, personal loans, and other such things, and spending by households plummeted. The initial policy response was to support failing banks, restore the supply of credit, and rebuild confidence. But this was hugely expensive, and the incoming coalition government committed itself to paying off the debt as quickly as possible by cutting government spending. In other words, austerity. But this was a particularly ill-informed response, since they also wanted GDP growth, which the crisis had shrunk by 7.2%, and austerity during a recession will always increase debt and kill off growth. Households therefore had to endure a flatlining economy, while the least well-off also lost essential services. The COVID-19 pandemic also produced both a recession and a large increase in public debt. This time, the policy response aimed at protecting the UK's population and economy, but with no immediate program of austerity. However, the pandemic depressed both demand and supply around the world, and when demand did begin to return, supply was slower to ramp up, raising commodity prices, fueling inflation, and triggering a cost of living crisis. Soon after, the war in Ukraine caused a significant increase in food and energy prices. Unfortunately, these are all things that the UK and EU in particular need to import, so we have little or no direct impact on the prices. The policy response by the Bank of England, though, seems to ignore this. If the inflation was homegrown, caused by too much money chasing too few goods, like, say, a housing bubble, successive increases in UK interest rates would make sense. As it is, they'll simply increase the cost of mortgage and loan repayments, making the crisis far worse for many households. Taking these 3 crises together, it's clear that households also face an economic double whammy, with policy responses making life even harder. It's also true that all 3 types of crisis have happened before, many times in the case of financial crises. This begs the question of how policy might be designed to make our economy and society less vulnerable, rather than producing short-term crisis responses under pressure.